This video will contain massive spoilers for Xenoblades 1, 2, and Future Connected, as well as the entire Xenosaga series. One of the most inspiring things about Xenoblade to me is the fact that the origin of the entire original game was just an idea Tetsuya Takahashi had one day that he decided to try to make into a game. It was the simple concept of, what if people lived on the bodies of two giant dead gods? And apparently, that was enough where the entire game came just from rolling with it. I think I might have had the equivalent to that idea, if only for my weird fanficky obsession with tying all the Xeno games together and not any completely original stories of my own. A couple days ago, I had an image come across my mind. Now, I'm sure concepts like this have been done many times in many places and things I just don't know about, but I might have found a way to make it even cooler. I had the image of a young woman setting out from home. You could tell based on her clothes, her weapon, and the village she's leaving behind that this is a fantasy setting, and her home is a fairly generic one for a fantasy protagonist. Serene little farming village, nestled in the middle of a green valley, at peace with nature, not too much going on, but she has to set out for bigger and brighter things for some reason or another, to find the answer to something, for the love of adventure itself, or in order to stop someone who did something bad and had gotten away. The one big difference, though, is strapped to her back is not the backpack you would expect, full of gear and provisions for what may be a very long journey even to the next town, but the mangled remains of a broken robot. And you might be figuring out my idea from this. That already seems pretty cool. I would want to just expand that idea and figure out exactly how this happened and the story behind it. Try to do it without introducing multiple universes or lost technology and just see where that goes. But I had two other things to make it something worth talking about in a video. What if that robot was the damaged remains of KOS-MOS from the end of Xenosaga III? And what if the world she was setting out into was the one created by Shulk at the end of Xenoblade Chronicles? So where do you go from that, really? Well, I actually had a couple ideas, and this ties into a few other things I'd been talking about Future Connected, namely the fact that I'm pretty sure if the Xenoblade 1 world is revisited, there will be more Fog Kings and creatures like that, and the fact that the Fog King is basically a Gnosis. So, you know how Alvis at the end was like, yeah, this world is boundless, there's more life, you'll meet that someday, to Shulk and Fiora. Well, let's start off with the new life, this new main character, this new village, all of that completely original. Hide the fact that it's Xenoblade, besides the fact that it would be Xenoblade in the title. Just make it seem like, okay, this is going to be a fantasy game that might have some Xeno elements, but the main Xenoblade thing is the game style and the auto attack arts combat system and probably like the big world design type thing because it's Monolith Soft. Or at least start that way for like the first 20 to 30 minutes, because we're gonna put an Earthbound reference in here too and have a meteor crash land outside the main character's hometown at night, except let's just say she's a town guard or something. Make it interesting. I prefer slightly older characters, honestly. Like, sure, 18, big transformative age or whatever, but I like early and mid-20s too. Maybe it's because I'm in my early 20s now, like, I'm older than Faye and Shulk, so, wow, that seems weird. I can't relate to these heroic characters anymore because they're a lot more physically active than I was at 18, but Shion, she's like 22, right? I have an entire year to get in as much shape as she is. It might be something like that, but I think it would be college age, a bit older than that, something like that. Make her the first person who would be out there and find that this meteor was actually the torso of KOS-MOS, who finally somehow drifted through space, probably got Zohar transitioned over into another universe, and eventually plopped down on whatever planet she finds herself on. So, being from somewhere with no grasp on high technology, including androids, she sees this strange metal woman who is able to talk despite missing most of her body, and basically decides to, alright, we're gonna find someone who knows what the hell you are, because I'm very confused. So, of course, their meeting can be played for comedy because it's KOS-MOS. She's played for comedy as often as she's played for genuine, heartbreaking seriousness. And I talked about this in the idea of, oh, Shulk is the one who finds her. I've mentioned this before, where she gives the entire spiel introducing herself, like the entire set of things she says to Shion at the beginning of episode 1, where it's like, serial number, code name, I am an anti-Gnosis battle android developed by Vector Industries, yada yada. All that happens, and it starts out just as kind of a really generic fantasy plot, but the human MacGuffin is KOS-MOS. So you could just get some character interactions over that, go from like fantasy town to fantasy town. The general idea is to get over the mountains, because no one from the starting village has been over the mountains, and that might be where someone who knows about androids would be, or something, just because, okay, there's people who have been to all the villages they know about on this side of the mountains, and no one would know there, because it's all basically small farming villages, or maybe like one trade hub, but mountains, big scary place, there's probably some local legends about that, so you go through there, you go through a couple towns, you could probably pick up a couple party members along the way. I really want a martial artist. It's been too long since we've had a Xeno character who fought completely without a weapon. Laura almost made it, but she doesn't. So, you were close, but yeah, I want martial artists again. It's been far too long. Make them a reference to Faye in combat style or something. I don't know. We need something like that. But eventually, you get to a bigger town, probably like a trading hub, something closer to a main road, and near enough to the mountains where people are coming there from the other side, and you might see people of other races than just humans or something. This is where Napon starts showing up, so you remember, oh yes, this is a Xenoblade game, even though the only recognizable character is from Saga. And one of the characters you meet there is just someone who's like, oh, you want to learn more about metal ladies? Well, you should come with me back to the colony. I've seen that there are plenty of people like her out there, except they're repaired and stuff, so there's bound to be someone who knows about them. And also, along the way, like, I said town guard just to give a justification for this character knowing how to fight already, because I had one cool scene in mind where, basically, she is a competent fighter. She knows what she's doing, but there are these fog creatures that show up, and whenever they do, no one is able to touch them using physical attacks, weapons, any sort of projectiles. Fire doesn't work, and I guess they could call ether magic just because they're from a part of the world where the setting is completely fantasy-based. So they would just refer to it as magic, and even that doesn't work. So if you encounter one, the only option is to run and kill any fog beasts it creates. But at one point, after make one of the opening scenes fighting off a couple fog beasts and then getting attacked by a fog creature and having to actually run away from it, and that happens. And later on, when you're first leaving the village or whatever, it attacks again, and the main character is about to flee. KOS-MOS is like, no, please stand your ground. This foe is more than within your capability to take out. But I don't understand. I can't touch this. Nothing can touch this. Please recall, I am an anti-Gnosis battle android. This creature is a Gnosis. What are you talking about? Activating Hilbert effect. And then that happens, and basically, eventually this is going to be used as a justification for why the party is the one who has to deal with all the shit going on, because it's all fog creatures, and they have the Hilbert effect. And yeah, Shulk, spoiler alert, Shulk is going to show up later in this, and he has his own thing too with the Monado Rex, so maybe even split the party, have one with KOS-MOS and one with Shulk. Anyway, so they head out over the mountains for the colony, and KOS-MOS is disconnected from the network because she's in another universe, but also because the UMN is gone. So she thinks, oh, this might be just a planet that was settled by people who either lost some of their advanced technology or were intentionally getting rid of some of it and trying to revert to an earlier stage of civilization. But if there's a place called the colony, this might have been founded by people coming from elsewhere. Possibly it's even a space colony and there's an actual spaceport or something. And people didn't want to cross over the mountains because they were afraid of all the stuff there and cause legends and stuff. But no, it's going to be Colony 9, because I said it had to tie into Xenoblade 1 somehow. So, eventually, they get there. There's Napon, there's Hyantia. there's Machina. KOS-MOS is like, hey, no, they might look sort of like me. They might be made out of metal, but this is not me. I'm different. We need an engineer. And eventually they get directed to the weapon development laboratory, possibly after KOS-MOS is like, well, if I don't see other androids around here, or other robots at all, so maybe we'll have better luck looking for someone who knows how to deal with the weapons, because I am also a weapon. So they go to the weapon dev laboratory, and they run into Shulk, and this is a slightly older Shulk than I think I've ever conceptualized about in the past. I made that one video, like the one where I predicted Future Connected, or I said time skip like 5 years away from the ending of Xenoblade 1. So Shulk's the one in his early 20s, but I like bumping him up mid to late 20s, if only because I want him to be old enough to realistically have a kid who's a few years old. Basically because of one bit of fan service for Xenoblade 2 fans. So they meet up. Shulk has no goddamn idea what a battle android is because, well, they were never really invented. They had autonomous creatures and mechon, but never fully sentient, artificially created life. Even the Machina were given sentience by a goddess in some effect. So, yeah, they're mechanical, but they're basically non-organic life forms as opposed to a machine that can think and feel for itself. And obviously, at this point, this version of KOS-MOS is more human than she's ever been before, because this is post-Xenosaga 3, post that character development, post her consciousness merging with Mary Magdalene, who was human that we know of. So she's obviously acting far more human than she ever has before, but she seems a bit reserved, like, man, I don't really want to get too close to you guys because I just want to get home. There are people who need me and people who I'm looking for, so it doesn't seem like any of you have ever met Shion and friends, so I'm just trying to get myself repaired and get out of here, so the sooner we can get me to a place that can repair stuff, the better. But eventually they realize, okay, people are already starting to see the woman with the robot on her back as a sort of folk hero for being the only one who's capable of dealing with the fog creatures or something. And even Shulk's like, wait, you want to leave? But we need you. I can't handle all of this stuff myself. Because sure, the Monado Rex can do that kind of stuff, but he's only one person, and there are some things that are too powerful even for him, or he hasn't perfected the Hilbert effect, so it's not as strong as it is when KOS-MOS uses it. So, eventually, obviously, we meet some of the other members of the Xenoblade 1 cast who would be around, basically. Juju's older, he's a member of the Defense Force too. Rhine is some high-ranking individual. Dunban, I always saw Dunban as becoming the mayor of Colony 9 after this. I might have said Colony 6 before by accident, but I meant Colony 9. Like, Ricky is older, he's probably not doing too much anymore. Charla is probably like an actual doctor. You could see her being like head of medical school. Kino and Juju are obviously best friends who are on the Defense Force, so that's not even negotiable. Nene is like a professional monster hunter. She and Shulk are the ones who go around beating up the fog creatures most of the time. Melly is still out in Alchemoth, and all the other characters are doing their thing. But at one point, Shulk just straight up introduces this new party to his family, which, yeah, it's older. He married Fiora. I'm not touching that. People are going to be way too mad if I do. But they also have a young daughter, and this young daughter is named Galea. Fiora, the justification given is, I don't know, it just kind of slipped into Fiora's mind one day, and it seemed just right. Don't know where it came from, but we both agreed that it made sense. So, basically, main influence on Fiora. Fiora had some of her memories, possibly including her being human, and that's where she got the name Galea from. I just think that's a nice little cute thing to have happen. If my other idea was for them to have a son named Egil, but that just seemed kind of weird. I don't think that they would name a kid after Egil. Dixon would be more likely, if you're going to name a kid after any villain. And Klaus would be way too on the nose, plus Shulk looks exactly like Klaus, so they might as well just kind of Shulk Jr., but Galea works. So, stuff happens, Shulk is able to partially repair KOS-MOS or something, but she's not fully operational or anything, and blah blah, MacGuffin required, Shulk has to join the party in order to help look for something, materials that would be used to help repair her. Fiora decides to go. This time, we're gonna make Fiora more important. Shulk is obviously a supporting character in this because I think after his story was finished in Xenoblade 1, he's just going to be a supporting character every other time he shows up, and I'm fine with that. His story is kind of complete, and if you want to bring any other party members from Xenoblade 1 with you, I think Fiora would just be nice because she kind of gets shafted even after coming back in the main story, and it would be nice to see how their relationship has evolved. Rein, yeah, I feel like Kino would be the most likely to come, and besides that, and that's kind of mostly my bias for characters who look like Finch speaking, but I think he and Shulk would, like, legitimately stay buddies after this. Nene's just kind of off doing her own thing. She's, like, single-handedly protecting the colony because, like, you really think Juju is capable of that? The impetus for Shulk and Fiora first joining the party could either be needing to find a MacGuffin to fix KOS-MOS, or big fog creature attacks somewhere, the party volunteers to go deal with it, or Shulk is initially getting ready to go, and the party volunteers to help out because they have KOS-MOS and fighting experience and all that kind of stuff. So, either one of those works, but they stop by Vinea on the way out, and she's like, "Oh, you here to pick these up, or are you heading out for something?" Shulk's like, "Yeah, don't really know what we're going to be dealing with. This might be uncharted territory even for us. I think we need to bring our mech on." And yeah, they rebuilt Face Nemesis, but, like, as a normal mech, and they built Shulk his own Face Mechon. I think I liked Face Nemesis and Face Genesis for Fiora and Shulk respectively, and before they go, Shulk hands Fiora something he'd made her, which was basically her headset back from when she was a Mechon, but instead of being, like, part of her body or whatever, it's just a headset that reads her brainwaves and lets her control drones. So Fiora fights more like she did as a Mechon because she's gotten better at Ether, and I guess she's physically trained, so she's capable of using bigger knives than she did before. And then she could still use drones to do cool stuff. Shulk would obviously have a Monado Rex of some sort. I envision his lab would be basically just covered with all the different replica Monados, and something that looks really close to the Monado one, but just barely isn't it, and probably multiple Rexes or something. We don't really know why Shulk can still use Monado arts with the replica Monado, or how replicatable the Hilbert effect of the Monado Rex is, because that apparently needs some sort of super pure ether crystal that can only be found on the shoulder, and who knows when that might have dried up. So, don't really know about that. I like the idea of Shulk still being the only one who can really directly handle this threat, or him at least needing to be there. So, that happens. You got two Face Mechon. I kind of like the idea of Shulk being able to plug the Rex into his, and that allowing him to output his Hilbert effect at a wider area, and then that would require KOS-MOS riding along with Fiora in the new Nemesis. Basically doing a haha, look, this is kind of like ES Dina situation, where that's how they use their Hilbert effect. As for the other party members, I mean, I said martial artist. There has to be at least 3 party members before you get to Colony 9, and then you get Shulk and Fiora at, like, the same time or something. So, main character who I envisioned using some sort of polearm, probably a spear more than a staff, because a staff is more of a melee thing, and I can't really describe too much the original image of her walking out of the town with KOS-MOS on her back, but I just kind of saw her having a long weapon, just to, like the classic adventurer wielding their staff thing, but this is, like, actually a weapon because she's dressed up in not overly fantasy armor, so probably just, like, a spear of some sort. Maybe more Naginata than Western spear, but whatever. And then the third party member, I kind of like the idea of a healing merchant who's basically like, alright, screw it, I'm going to be stuck with these guys for the foreseeable future. I have all the shit on me now that I'm not going to find a way to reliably sell, so I'll just toss these salves and stuff, and that's how I do my healing. I don't know. I'm just spitballing at this point. But eventually, KOS-MOS is rebuilt, and she's rebuilt into KOS-MOS Refrain, but not, like, exactly as she shows up in Xenoblade 2, sort of like a kind of shitty patchwork version, because Shulk doesn't have access to all the equipment that would be necessary to rebuild her to the same standard as Vector could. The idea being, alright, I can fix her and give her functional limbs again and make her able to fight alongside with us, but I'm going to have to strip away a lot of what seem to have been incremental upgrades made to her. We're going to have to revert back to stuff based on the oldest frame, like the original framework that was laid out. So that's how she goes back from version 4 to version 1. Unfortunately, boobs have to go down. Shion's going to be extremely disappointed by that when she finds out, I'm sure. And that leads into her being rebuilt as something in between version 4 and Refrain, with the idea that eventually she does reunite with Shion and then is rebuilt by her into the actual Refrain we see in Xenoblade 2, and that becomes canon to some regard. But eventually she gets rebuilt. Maybe she gets a bit more of her memory back. She's able to properly explain to Shulk and the other people who were around for the end of Xenoblade 1, who would better understand all this universal stuff, to these are Gnosis. I don't know where they're coming from, but this is what they actually are. We need something called a Zohar. Have you heard of this? And eventually they might be led into the idea of Shulk figuring out more about the experiment, basically the Xenoblade 2 side of things. Don't really know about that. Probably don't need Alvis to come back for it. Could be more Fiora having Mammoth memories or something, or it could be KOS-MOS just kind of extrapolating based on what Shulk explained, and she probably would draw the Zohar at some point and Shulk would recognize the shape. Could possibly retcon the Conduit into being a Zohar emulator at this point. I don't know. But regardless, they find a way to stop these fog creatures, at least more. Maybe it actually involved calling on Alvis to use Zohar power to get rid of them, or at least draw them away from this planet. And it ends with them trying to find a way to bring KOS-MOS back because don't need her Hilbert effect anymore, and that kind of stuff. One thing I really thought of was it cliffhanger ends with, I mean, just because it's a Xeno game with mechs, the entire party is going to have to get mechs at some point, so I'm imagining Face Mechon being built for Staff Girl, Martial Artist, and whoever third and other party members are. I still kind of pictured KOS-MOS riding alongside Fiora and Kino or whoever with Shulk, so maybe all of these are dual piloted stuff, something like that too. And obviously, once she's repaired, KOS-MOS does become like a playable party member. You're not going to cock tease your friends with the robot lady coming back and not actually being able to do anything, when that's like a really big scene, and you get to play her theme from the Xenosaga series, which I had a really funny idea where we start with the Xenoblade game with her in it, and then have a Xenosaga game where we pick up with Shion and the gang as they have wacky space adventures trying to find Lost Jerusalem, and they're about to get swarmed by a gang of renegade Gnosis who weren't called by the Zohar, or Chaos missed them or something. And that's when a portal opens up and all the Face Mechon from this other Xenoblade show up and are like, hey, we'll help you out. KOS-MOS, go save your friends. And the thing is, KOS-MOS has a theme. She has a couple throughout the Xenosaga series, and that's short. That's exactly what you would expect. Characters have themes, but the ones she has in Saga 2, Missing Year, and Saga 3 are all variations on the same thing, and they're called Here She Comes, 2, Here She Is, Missing Year, She's Coming Back, 3, and they all have like the same general melody and stuff, but Here She Comes, the one from Xenosaga 2, is really nice because she is not a focal character in that game at all. It's mostly focused on Junior. So instead of just being KOS-MOS' theme, her theme mixes in Sweet Song, which is the ending theme of the game, and the vocal version, which is playing over the credits, is a song told from Junior's perspective, and it mixes the main melody of that alongside the melody of KOS-MOS' own theme, and it's just cool and whatever, but the later two versions don't do that because Missing Year and 3 are more focused on her specifically. But I'm just imagining on the Xenosaga side, it doesn't really matter what this version of the song is called. It could be Yes, She's Back or whatever, but you mix in either the Xenoblade main theme or the melody of Beyond the Sky into her normal theme, and it just sounds really cool because, wow, look at that. It's not just her coming back in a new form to save Shion like she does every time, like every Xenosaga, everything with both characters in it. KOS-MOS will save Shion in some sexy and dramatic way, but also, that's Xenoblade characters. We know those guys. And then that could set up some new universal thing, but I just kind of think stuff like that is cool. And me being me, I have a flair for the dramatic, and was able to like actually envision exactly the lines and things that would go into a trailer, because of course That's apparently the stuff I pay attention on. And like gameplay wise, I'm not actually sure what I would do for something like this. I want to say a bit more action-y based. I also kind of want to say try and figure out how to work death blows from Xenogears into a Xenoblade style combat system where maybe instead of auto attacking, you have a couple regular attack buttons. Like, if you think about it, if you go for arts palette like 1 and X did, you still use the D-pad to select arts and A to attack, but then you'd still have B, X, and Y, which are, again, the Xenoblade 2 art buttons and the Xenogears regular attack buttons. So I'm thinking, like, could you, if you replaced auto-attacking with a regular attack you had to press buttons for, maybe turn this into a proper action RPG if you really want to do that and have, like, hitboxes and stuff and a dodge or something like that if you really want to do that. But you could also just, like, hold down one of those buttons or tap one of those buttons and you switch into a different auto-attack mode. But I'm thinking of it might be possible to use that to either add a regular attack or turn your auto attack into something you can combo to do specific things and make stuff like death blows work. And then instead of chain attacking only being using arts, you can also do death blows in that way or something. And I don't really know. Chain attacks, one thing the actual way the combat system is laid out doesn't really matter for this. It could be a carbon copy of Xenoblade 1 with some tweaks to accompany these new mechanics. Could be a carbon copy of X, could be a carbon copy of 2, could be something completely new but still Xenoblade. But things that I've always wanted in a Xenoblade game are the ability to swap out active party members for inactive party members, probably at the expense of new character retains all the aggro, the same percentage of HP lost, not number because some characters have 9,000 and some characters have like 4,000, and getting all the bad statuses while losing any buffs or auras or stuff like that. So big penalties, but you don't have to run away and swap party members for that. And then please, outside of chain attacks, just give a button that lets you toggle between which character you're actively controlling in the middle of a fight. Please. It basically lets you get around really bad AI moments a lot of the time. I don't know. Also make Tyrea playable. I know she and Fiora both have the same dual weapon thing, but Tyrea is more ether-based and Fiora is more physical-based. And if you don't want to put KOS-MOS in Nemesis, then put Tyrea in Nemesis and make it have 4 arms this time with 4 different weapons, 2 of which are ether thingies and 2 of which are just swords. So before we get into the trailer thing, because I had a couple lines that I actually liked for some reason, for a title, what the hell would you call this? I don't really know. Xenoblade Cross Xenosaga doesn't really make sense. Something related to New World, maybe Fog of the New World, I don't know. Like, if you want to go in that route, honestly, Tales of Symphonia stole Dawn of the New World like a decade ago, and we're never getting that back, so can't really come up with anything for that. Maybe give it some German title, because, oh, haha, this is a Xenoblade game featuring a Xenosaga character, and the plot partially revolving around her and the new friends she's made. So, let's name it after Nietzsche something. And the one I most liked, and this would go for what I would subtitle Xenosaga IV, because the titles chosen for 1 to 3 all have symbolic or some sort of thematic meaning. There's a reason why each game is given that title, and I'm not going to try and pronounce this at all, because according to my analytics, the non-primarily English-speaking country I have the biggest audience in is Germany, so I'm not doing that to you, don't worry. But this one, because apparently in English it translates to dawn or the dawn of day, and thematically that's just kind of neat, mostly because it really fits the idea of KOS-MOS waking up again after being asleep for God knows how long, with the idea of this being a new world dealing with its new problems that aren't tied down to the baggage of Zanza in the old one. Possibly. Maybe these Gnosis came from Alvis doing something, or are people from the old world who weren't satisfied or whatever. But basically, things going bad, not directly Zanza's fault, so new world type stuff. And then the idea of, this is the dawn, Xenosaga is coming back after all this time. Daybreak has arrived. I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles Daybreak actually works kind of too. So it's Xenoblade Chronicles Daybreak, and then Xenosaga Episode 4 connects to that, and that is actually just straight up titled this thing. But trailer I just had the idea of starting out from the perspective of New Girl, who I never really came up with a name for. This is very off the cuff. You can tell that I ad-libbed most of this video in mostly 1 to 5 takes. So, yeah, sorry about that. But I couldn't really think of a way to script this very well. But it opens with her just doing her thing until she meets KOS-MOS and she introduces herself and all the Xenosaga fans wet themselves. And then it starts from the perspective of a narration of KOS-MOS basically recording a voice message to Xion that she will receive basically the next time she's connected to something or detects a network, and that will be sent out and like, hey, Xion, you can go get this. Maybe she's constantly broadcasting that through EM channels as well, because that's the way the characters got their connection at the end of Saga 3, so maybe she still has a radio in her. But anyway, it's something like, hello Xion, it's been a while since I've spoken to you, but I am well and I hope you are too. I have found myself in a strange place, a strange new world, and blah blah blah. And then something like, yes, I am damaged. Yes, I am weak. But I have found new friends here. Friends with the same shining wills as those we had met and come to love back home. I'm okay. But it seems like I am needed here. I don't know when my job here is done. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in a year. Maybe in 10,000. Nice little reference to the ending theme of Xenosaga 3 and the amount of time Xenogears World was. But when I am, I promise I will come back to you. And then it ends on, do not fear for me, Xion. I'm coming back. And then that's like, oh, well, they did the cool thing. That's pretty epic and stuff. And it is just a neat idea that I thought was kind of cool. I don't expect this video to do very well or people to like this idea very much at all, because it's honestly kind of dumb. That's why the word dumb is going to be in the title of this, because it really is kind of dumb. Namely the fact that new life was created on Shulk's planet and not just on other planets, and that these characters would be older than the time from when the old universe was created. Now, obviously, you could use this to retcon Albus plopped them in a different universe or in the Xenoblade 2 universe or something, and you could totally do that. But if the story is a new cast in a more fantasy setting, getting hit with the immediate culture shock of bam, there's actually a ton of heavily advanced technology in this world, and all that happens and stuff, and then also tying it into Xenoblade 1 and Xenosaga, you don't need Xenoblade 2 in here. The only Xenoblade 2 thing that's necessary is the Galea thing, because that's absolutely adorable, and obviously, the kid is probably not going to look like Galea. Shulk and Fiora are both blonde. I doubt the kid is going to have silver hair, especially at a very young age, but I also... another scene I had in mind was Shulk and Fiora are heading out, they're about to get in their mech on, and they both look at each other as, oh shit, Galea, what do we do about her? And it just smash cuts from them about to get into the mechon to Fiora just basically like busting open Ricky's front door and being like, hey, Ricky, watch Galea, we're going monster hunting. And Ricky's like, oh, Ricky getting too old for this. Have enough Little Pon already. And Oka like bops him on the head like, no, we take care of friends Little Pon. Ricky say Shulk is family member, so Shulk's child is also family member. That would be funny if Shulk's kid is Ricky's first grandkid, because I'm pretty sure all of Ricky's children are like younger, both chronologically and maturity-wise, than Shulk and Fiora. So if Ricky did actually adopt Shulk, because his last adoptive father kind of turned out to be a shitbag, if Shulk's kid is actually Ricky's first grandkid, because that would be pretty funny. And like basically guilt-tripping Ricky into watching his own grandchild. Or Nene's like, man, it's been a while since I've had to take care of a really young kid. I don't mind this. This is just like old times now that Kino is living on his own outside of the house, and it does not need constant attention to avoid wetting himself, and then Kino smacks her on the head or something. I don't know. I feel like Napon culture, because they're so much more durable, like hitting someone isn't seen as like, oh, an awful thing that you definitely shouldn't do to your own child. It's just like, if you're like bouncy and fluffy and easily absorb shocks and can like ping pong around a room without getting too hurt, apparently, it's probably more of a term of endearment than it would be. Like, I'm getting into how culture of a fantasy race with different biology than our own would be, but it's okay for Napon to be slapstick more than humans being slapstick in the context of family members hitting each other. That's what I'm getting at. But yeah, that's my... Oh, other gameplay mechanic. Tweak chain attacks, so instead of just being between your 3 active party members, it is all of the party members. It starts out with the active ones, but if your affinity is good, instead of looping around back to the beginning or doing what Xenoblade 2 did, you get to call on... Basically, once you go through the 3 party members, you can choose between any of your reserve party members or the first person in line. So after you do 3, anytime you get a chance to use another link in the chain, you can select which character besides the previous one who just went you can use. And I think that would be neat to expand combo potential and stuff. But yeah, that's my very dumb idea for a Xenoblade game with KOS-MOS in it, and I hope you didn't hate it as much as I'm probably going to in hindsight. Goodbye.